And welcome back. You are listening to the Money Matters Show. We're in our final half hour, which is our Tucson Business Spotlight segment. So we're excited to have Amy Bright with us here today to talk about writing and her career as an author, kind of on the side of a lot of other stuff that she has going on. But we're excited to have her here. She was out at the book fair, and we're going to chat with her.
Right. And Amy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got started in the book business, writing, being an author, etc.
Well, I've been writing just about my whole life. I wrote my first story in third grade, and I won an award. It was called The Lonely Crayon, and it was a very tragic story about the white crayon never being used. And then I've been writing forever. I've written mysteries and horror and some tragic poems, and, a screenplay and all kinds of things. And nothing I ever actively pursued publishing until I started writing romance. So that's what I write now. I write contemporary and historical romances. I'm what they call a hybrid published author. I self-publish, and I'm also published through one of the big houses, Harlequin, a division of Harlequin called Carina Press, which is now all owned by one of the big houses. So my journey's kind of been kind of typical of what's happening now in publishing, because there's so many more options.
So obviously people are still reading books.
Lots of reading, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it was evident when we were out at the Tucson Festival of Books how many people were not only there to buy books or just stop by and visit, but
and hear from authors and meet them, right, and talk to them and listen to the lectures. I was amazed. I still am every year at the book festival, because I fear as a parent for my children that reading and actual books are going to go away. And there is a lot of shift.
Yeah,
we can talk about some of your books that are e-books, right, or electronic. Mm-hmm. Then that's the only way you can purchase them is electronic, correct?
My published books through Harlequin at this point are only available through ebooks. However, something really exciting happened to me last month. Carina is the house that does just e-publishing. There are several big publishers out there. Entangled is another one who does just e-publishing, but they're kind of branching into print. The problem is that print is obviously way, way more expensive. So there's a lot you have to do to recoup your expenses on that. But since Carina is a division of Harlequin, Harlequin actually picked up my second in the series to be in their subscription service. So the subscription service is people who every month receive like 6 or 8 books or something like that from their chosen subgenre. So my subgenre is just contemporary, as opposed to paranormal or historical or Amish even. And so everyone who subscribes to that is going to get that book that month. So sometimes they are published in paper. But e-publishing is not going anywhere. It's huge. It's only going to get bigger. The younger generation has really grasped on to that idea. You know, they're on their phones all the time. Right. So it's really big as far as the younger generation's coming up with.
So take us back. You obviously you've enjoyed writing for a long, long time.
Yep.
I shouldn't say that. You're not that old. But so when did you decide that you wanted to try to publish books or get books out to the public?
Well, it's kind of a silly story. I had never read romance. I was one of those literary snobs that doesn't read romance because the covers, let's face it, it was the covers. And they're all kind of gotten to be a joke, and believe me, the romance authors get the joke. And sometimes it's just a competition who's got the best of the romance covers, you know. There's whole contests for that, literally. But anyway, I didn't read those. I thought they were ridiculous, and being snobbish as I was. So my best friend gave me a Julia Quinn book, the first in a series that she's made hugely famous. And I was sitting at a long stoplight, and I picked it up and started reading it. And I read every single book that she'd ever written. And then I found more authors like her and more and more and more. And then I just one Halloween, actually, after the kids were through trick-or-treating, I sat down and started writing a romance book. And that ended up being my first book that was published, and I can't tell you what year that was, I'm sorry. But it's called Lady Belling's Secret, and it just kind of blossomed from there.
Is that your historical?
That's my first historical. And that's a first in a series. The fourth one comes out in April. So I did a lot of research. How do you get published? I read lots of books about getting an agent and how you go about doing that. This was really before the self-publishing boom had developed to the point where it wasn't embarrassing to self-publish anymore, because there was a big stigma about that for a very long time. And that has radically shifted within the author community for certain. Some of the hugest authors out there are now self-publishing because the royalties are so much more. When you're not paying your editor and your publishing house and back royalties and all that stuff, it's leaps and bounds bigger when you're self-publishing.
So explain self-publishing.
Okay. So there's a couple of ways to do it. I actually do it a little bit differently. I do it through my literary agent. She sends it to Amazon. I'm exclusive with Amazon. I have a program with them. And I have to pay for everything up front by myself. So I pay to have my covers created. I have a cover artist that does a superb job. I have to pay for an editor. I have to pay for videos if I want to have a trailer made. That's kind of a common thing. I have to pay for my websites. I have to pay for all of my bookmarks and marketing materials, everything. So all of that has to go in, and then basically I get it all put together after the editor has gone through it and we've all happy with how it's turned out, and we send it to the publisher, who is Amazon. You can buy my books on ebook or through print on demand through Amazon. They have a company that does that as well.
And so you were explaining to me, as far as Amazon goes, if someone knows of you directly as an author and they look up your book to purchase, which is what I did. Mm-hmm. That's how I purchased your books. Then that's one way to get it. But you said that also one of the benefits to Amazon is there's recommendations, or it's like almost advertising or recommendations.
It's literally advertising
to other to readers that are in the same genre. Basically, they buy something else, and I get that all the time. If I buy like a toy for my child, it's hey,
I bet
you might like this if you liked that. And now I understand what they're doing because you explained it to me.
Yeah. So when you get those emails from Amazon that says you liked this, other readers who like this also, or hey, look at these other Regency romance authors or whatever you're buying, that's exactly what Amazon's doing. They're advertising those authors.
Is that process? Do you pay for that for have that advertisement? Or?
I don't, because I'm published through my agent through a program that does that. And part of my exclusivity with Amazon is that they advertise for me.
Okay, but that means you don't sell your books on any other...
It means I don't use any other e-platform. So I don't go through Smashwords, iBooks, or Kobo. That's the other big one. Okay. Or, any of those, Nook as well. So there's the Nook from Barnes & Noble. Smashwords is completely independent on all platforms. iBooks, obviously, or go for the iPhone. So I don't publish those books through any other platform. The Carina Press books are published on every platform. Google Books, iBooks, every platform. And then I have 1/3 title that I self-publish completely on my own without my agent. That's everywhere.
And then your hardback book, or not your hardback, your print paper books are sold where?
Those are sold online through Amazon. Mm-hmm. You can, like I said, print on demand. You just order one. You don't know that it's print on demand. You just assume there's a giant warehouse. But
so they don't print them and have them in storage anywhere anymore. You print them. You order it. They print it and send it to you.
So one of the biggest problems that independent authors are having with self-publishing is that there's really no distribution channel for paper books. So in Tucson, you can buy my paper books at Mostly Books on Speedway. They actually stock my paper books because I walk in there and give them to them. But there's not really a distribution channel for sending those everywhere else.
Right.
So that's where ebooks really come into play. I always have paper when I go to a festival or a big signing, any of that, I always have paper.
Are most of your books, then you're saying, are the ebook type?
Yes, they're all available on ebook, and that's where all the sales are.
You have the majority of sales that way.
I find really the only people who are buying the print books are me, because I buy them to stock, and then, like my mom.
Hey, I bought some of your print books.
Oh, well, very nice.
For my mom.
That's true, but you bought them at a festival. Right.
At the festival.
Right.
For my mom and my mother-in-law. I loaded up all my it was like gifts. I was like, I'm going to get this. This sounds great. And I bought several of your books. What do you think the future of books and reading is? There's a lot of discussion about, technology, the iPhones, the Nooks, the iPads. Everything seems to be going electronic. Yet there's also just something so real about holding a book and looking at paper and using a bookmark instead of tapping something on your screen. And what do you see just in the changes that have taken place? Because it seems like it's really advanced, the electronics, in the last 5 years even. Yeah. But what do you see as the future of reading and writing?
I don't think reading is going to go anywhere. I really don't. I think people have been reading forever, and I don't see the young people not reading. Even when they're on their electronic devices and they're playing video games and stuff, they still read. I don't really push books on my kids, but they're reading. Maybe that's just by virtue of being in a house that's filled with books. But, my daughter is still devouring all the Harry Potters. The Hunger Games was massive with young people. The Divergent series. There's just so many examples that show that reading isn't going anywhere, I don't think. I definitely think the platforms will change. I don't think that we're never going to not have paper books, at least not for a while, because people really do like that visceral feeling of holding a book, smelling a book. I'm a book fiend. So yes, I really do enjoy holding a book. You can share that so much easier with someone, and I think that bookstores are not going anywhere. However, oddly, I do think the independent bookstores are on their way back. All the big box stores are really struggling. Barnes & Noble's still struggling. But the independents are coming back. They don't have to have as much cost in opening a huge store and maintaining it as they do with the smaller ones. So that seems to be something that's coming on a rise. But I think books are not going anywhere. Writing certainly isn't.
And as an aspiring actor, for some of our listeners out there that may want to, actor. Yeah.
Amy, you have become an actor. You're going to have to say an actress. Be careful. You came in one thing.
I know
what you're going to leave
look
here.
What's happening.
But how difficult is it to become an author? If I like to write, and I've got a book. My wife would love to write children's books, but I think she's always been, I don't know what the right word is.
It's very intimidating.
Yeah.
It's very intimidating.
That's a good word.
Like, what's the first step?
Sitting down and putting a pen to a paper and doing it.
Right.
It sounds really silly to say it's something so easy, but honestly, if you don't just sit down and write it.
So then you have it written, and then what do you do?
Well, then you rewrite it about 108 more times, and you let people read it who know, and they tell you what to do with it. I can assure you the first thing that you write is not what's going to end up being published. I think that first book of mine was completely rewritten 5 total times. And it varied widely. The original book that I wrote is nothing like what ended up being written, because it's all a learning process. There's so much to learn about. Even with kids' books that seem juvenile, they're not. They're really actually quite complicated, and there's a story there, there's a lesson to learn, or whatever that author's going with. But you really need to sit down and do it, because the only way to learn that skill is to just keep doing it.
So who changed the book? The editor?
Well, what happened was when I wrote this book, and then I went and found all the ways that you go to finding out how to get it published. I read the books about getting an author. I joined RWA, which is Romance Writers of America. If you're going to be a writer, you really need to join writers groups, because that's where you find your people. The people who
I was going to ask, who are the people? Like, you go to the...
Romance Writers of America is a huge, huge organization, and there's chapters around the globe. There's Romance Writers of Australia and on. But that's where you go to find your people as writers groups. There's Southwest Writers of Arizona. There's the Mystery Writers. There's so many writers groups, and you really need to find your people, because otherwise people just sort of think you're crazy and they don't get you at all. So once you find those people, you're going to find an immeasurable amount of advice. I would never, ever have gotten published, and certainly not picked up by a publisher, without the advice of those people. So learn your craft. Just keep struggling. Take classes and keep writing, and then rewriting, and write some more, and then write another thing. That's the only way to do it, just to do it.
And then so you've gone through this process. Your book has been rewritten 5 times, and now you feel like you have the piece of what to move forward with. How did you find a publisher?
Well, I
mean, how does that happen? We saw people at the book fair literally that were saying, we're looking for publishers. I've had this book. I've written this book. We're looking for now. What do I do? Right. How do I get this published?
What you have to do is query. So a lot of publishers and editors won't accept unsolicited queries unless they're coming from an agent. So you probably need to get yourself an agent, a literary agent. Internet is just crazy full of ways to get in touch with an agent. Lists of them, who's accepting what, because you really need to send it to the right genre. Then your agent will submit it to publishers, and then they decide whether or not they're going to move forward. The editor is going to choose it. Then at this point, it has to go to committee. They all have to decide to buy it. That's why I ultimately ended up self-publishing. My agent loved my story. I did some changes based on her advice, and came up with a finished product. We submitted that all over the place while I was writing the second book, because that's the next best advice. Write the next book, and then the next book. And it got really excellent attention, but no publishers picked it up. Publishing is really tough right now. People are afraid to make purchases based on sales. Breakout authors haven't been around, in publishing for a while yet. So you really have to have something magnificent. So then my second book, we decided to submit that one, and a lot of times they'll pick up for 2. The second book got even more attention. I got some really incredibly great feedback from editors, and it just wasn't getting through committee. So you couldn't get 10 people to agree, yes, let's buy that book. So it's really frustrating. We decided to self-publish at that route, and then I found myself an editor and cover artists, and made as professional a product as we possibly could. The contemporary series that I write for Karina was picked up. I actually got to choose what publisher I wanted. More than one publisher wanted that, and they bought it on a 2-book deal. So that was submitted by my agent through to Karina directly.
Yeah, it seems like, the author, I love to read, but the thought of writing a book, number one, is like, that was not my strength. It seems so overwhelming, and then the process to get it going. But it sounds like for you, you had the love of reading and writing, and you really self-taught. You learned. You took the time to educate yourself on how to do it. There wasn't someone there holding your hand to do it.
Oh, no, you had to figure it all out. Yeah.
Figure it out. It'd be interesting if there was like a consulting group to help with that type of thing.
There's actually lots of them, but they all want to cut.
Yeah.
So you need to decide, if that's...
What are you willing to do?
Right. How much of your royalties are you willing to give away?
And you mentioned the difference in royalties, I guess, from the e-books to the print is really quite different, or self-publishing versus...
Publishing through a house, yes, it's hugely different.
Is that okay to talk about?
Sure. I'm just going to give you some basic ideas on the financial side. So, if I sell a book for $2.99, I myself make $1.80 off of that book. Above that, some of that goes to my agent, and then I get $1.80, which doesn't seem like a whole lot.
That's electronic.
That's the electronic books. Those are the self-published ones. Just the electronic. We're not going to talk about paper because those paper books are kind of an anomaly.
Right.
So I get $1.80 off of each one of those. If I sell 15,000 of them, you can do the math there.
Right.
Through the publishing house, I think I get like 35 cents off of that. So huge difference. I mean, I think it's about 35 cents, but even the big, Stephen King, even with those huge giant books that you're spending $30 on, I assure you he is getting pittance from that. So you have to sell scads and scads of those books in order to make any kind of real money. So the money that I make through my self-published books is
you're making
significantly different than 30 cents off of each book.
70 to 80% more.
But I'm curious to see what happens with the print run that's going for that second book with Karina that's going out to those subscribers. That'll go out in August, so I'll be able to see that on my royalty statement, and I'm really curious to see what happens there. As far as, you're always hoping that somebody's going to love that and pick up the first one and then see what else I've written, and, that's your goal all the time.
Right. Are most authors self-publishing now? Is it a trend to go to self-publishing?
I think that there's a lot of hybrid authors like myself, people who are still working with the house, the big publishing houses in New York and such, and then they're taking, especially authors who've been around a while, taking their backlist that they've gotten the rights back to and republishing those, making those all fresh and new again. So absolutely, there's a lot of people doing both sides.
What measures the success of an author? Is it sales? Is it
there's always did you hit the lists? New York Times, USA Today, Wall Street lists. Those are, huge measures of having done successfully. And there's self-published authors who've absolutely made those leaps. And then sometimes they will get a contract for New York, and I know some of them who've turned them down because they're still going to make more money self-publishing it. And then you make the lists on Amazon as well. There's the best, the top 100 and such, and they break those down by genre. So it's really kind of whatever you set as your goal, because not a whole lot of people make the lists, obviously. But I've made the top 5 Regencies on Amazon, and that's, party on the internet. Every time something like that happens, that's a really exciting big deal.
What is your goal as an author?
Gosh, I'd love to make the lists. I would like to end up, I still want that brass ring. Even though the money isn't there for it, I would still love to have my book on a Barnes & Noble shelf.
Yeah.
So I still hope to see that someday, get picked up by by Avon or Penguin or whatever, and have my book on a shelf. I would love that.
And you can write and do other things. I mean, you have a family, you also work and
I have a
had another career,
and
that's what I think is so neat about being an author. I mean, some authors, I'm assuming, are just, that's all they do is write and all the time. But if you're starting and getting in, you can do that while you have other things going on to get into it if you're interested.
Most authors have some other job. Most of them can't live off of just book royalties, although that is also a goal of mine, to just be able to live off, use that as my income. But yeah, I don't sleep though. You have to sacrifice something, so I'm up very late every night because I can't really write anything until the kids go to sleep. And I write a blog every week. There's usually at least 4 new entries on our blog. My sister and I write, called The Quill Sisters. We're here in Tucson, so it's all local stuff.
How can people find out about you, your books? Because we're going to be wrapping up here. If people are interested in finding out about your books or purchasing books, how can they do that?
Well, you can come to my blog, thequillsisters.com, TheQuillsisters. That's everything is listed there, and then that's just a comedy blog. And then if you go to Amazon, you can find Amy Lynn Bright, AMYLYNN, one word, Bright, and everything that I've written will come up.
Awesome. And if you're listening and you want that information back again, call us in the office and we'll get it. Amy, thank you. I told you the time would go fast. We're done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us and talking about this. I think it is just great, and it was wonderful to see you out at the book fair. That's it for us. That is a wrap. Again, as a reminder, Friday the markets are closed for Good Friday. Our radio show will not be live next Sunday. It'll be a pre-recorded show, and then we'll be back the following week. And until then, until we all speak again, be healthy, be profitable, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Bye-bye.